We're back.
We're back. Here we
and
are.
only a day late.
Day late.
I was in Denver at a conference presenting to environmental nonprofits on how they can better collaborate with media and journalists in the new media environment. So that was super fun and relaxing.
But you're talking a lot. You talked a lot at that conference, and you're ready for a good
Actually,
podcast.
I would say, like, if I gave myself a grade, I did historically, I probably talk more than I listen. And I was trying to be very aware, very cognizant. I'm doing the work. I listened a lot.
Really?
Because I have a lot to learn in the world of environmental journalism and collaborating with nonprofit. Like, I'm mostly there to build connections, and like, as a journalist, it's my job to listen more than talk. So I did a good job of that.
You guys, you heard it here. Even Zoe is capable of growth.
That's true.
Congrats.
Yep. I bought sunscreen today.
No, you wouldn't be on this podcast talking about these concepts. You wouldn't have had a lot of success coaching people for the last 6 years.
Everyone's growth curve looks differently. Mine is not trying to win every panel I'm on.
Well, you were a high school debater, not
true.
a high school cross-country star.
JV captain, baby.
JV captain.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was not captain of the varsity team. Wasn't that good. Imagine, and that's like why why my personality is how it is. Because if you were like actually good enough to be varsity captain, you like probably are a little bit better at you have less small dick energy, I guess. JV captain.
How do we translate this into today's topics?
I don't know. I'm sure we can just plow ahead and maybe I'll find a way to bring it back at the end regardless. But I'm really pumped on today's episode. Even if it is a day late, we have some exciting hotter knots that I think are going to take us to some personal places.
Ooh.
And then we have a listener question about when to do strength training, how to integrate strength training into your running from like a timing perspective. Like, when should you do it during your training week and like at what time of the day?
Love it.
And then we're going to talk about something which is very near and dear to my heart. Actually, this is probably extremely relevant. Stress. Like, we always tell our athletes stress is stress. And I finally had an athlete the other day who was like, okay, what does that actually mean? Like, that sounds like a fortune cookie. What is the science? So today we're going to go beyond the bumper sticker of stress is stress. We're going to bring studies. We're going to talk about CNS stress. We're going to like actually dig into the science about what we actually mean when we say stress is stress and what that means for your training.
No, this is huge. Great
if you're
topic.
working with a coach or if you're self-coached, we want to give you like actionable insights so you can understand like, this is what stress is, this is how to think about it, and this is how to actually adjust your training to reflect that information.
All right, well, I need to warm up here. I was just doing my strength work, so my body's warmed up, but...
You were doing your strength work in a flannel shirt?
Yeah.
Okay.
You get it done where you can. That's commitment. That's commitment, Zoe.
It's true.
You get it done when you can.
That's right. You did it, and we'll circle back to this when we talk about strength training, but you did it 3 hours after your run, so that's perfect timing.
Thank you. Thank you for that approval and that validation.
Yeah. We're activating that mTOR pathway.
I'm trying to activate my talking pathway so we can get into some of these topics. All right. Hot or not? Short shorts with briefs versus short shorts with liners.
So, okay.
Whoa.
I have 1 million pairs of running shorts. I'm so sorry. It's a disease. And I have one pair that I wear for all of my races.
Just one.
Just one.
Okay. It's your race pair.
And it's a pair of North Face shorts that have like shorts. It's like a 2-in-1 situation. So like tight shorts and then loose shorts over it. And I really like those for longer races because they prevent chafing and they keep everything held in. And there's like a trash pocket. And it's just like nice to have the inner layer and the outer layer. Like for modesty, like I don't want to be, when I'm running 100 miles, I just don't want to be thinking about stuff.
Sure.
So for longer races, I really like the 2-in-1 shorts with like the built, like it's 2 pairs of shorts basically. And then for not races, I like liners. I one time bought a pair of shorts that
you like briefs. Weren't you just describing the liner?
I'm not exactly sure how to define terms.
Liner is like when you have a short within a short.
Okay.
So like the
That's what I like
underwear
for
inside
racing.
goes down.
That's a brief then.
No,
a brief is just the underwear shape.
brief
one.
is just the underwear.
Okay.
Think tighty whities, but inside your shorts.
Okay,
That
yeah.
shape. Think a Speedo inside your shorts.
Okay. I mean, those are great. I mean, they're necessary. I have one pair of shorts that I bought not knowing they didn't have a liner, and I never wear those because, like, I am 31 years old and I have no idea what you're supposed to do with that, and no one can tell me.
You get your own underwear and you wear them.
But you can't just wear like whatever underwear. I don't have like running underwear.
You don't?
No.
Huh.
I have like life underwear and then I have running shorts.
Well, most shorts have something on the inside.
So, okay, what about you? Because I feel like there might be some physiological differences because of biological sex here. I'm just going to guess.
So excited to talk about this with you all today. I don't really like liners. It's more just because they're too hot.
Yeah.
It's extra fabric.
I like a little extra fabric.
I don't know. Back when I was running for Dynafit, a lot of their shorts had like a very significant short within it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why? Why have all that extra material? What are the Europeans? What's the purpose behind this?
Why do they need so much redundant ass fabric?
It's stupid, honestly. It's just dumb. I cut the liners out of every single pair of those shorts that I had, and I just wore the underwear of my choosing.
So you have running underwear?
A couple pairs.
Okay.
Yeah. But I really just prefer a pair of shorts with briefs. That's what I always train in, racing.
The ones that are built in?
Yes.
Okay.
With the built-in short little Speedo inside.
Yep.
And
I've seen it.
yeah, I think that they work well. I've had my shorts for way too long. Taking some recommendations for a new pair for sure at this point. But I just don't like the extra material.
Yeah.
I don't mind showing a little thigh, and if I, get self-conscious about that, I'll just get shorts with a longer inseam, but still the same concept. Forget the liner. It's too hot. It's extra material. Yeah. I don't know. I run pretty warm. Maybe if you're an athlete who gets cold, wants to put on the basketball shorts with the basketball liners on, hey, if that's for you, great. I just think the briefs are better and less, less chafage and all that as well.
I like the double short for racing, but I mean, for day in, day out, I don't like it when there's a longer short and then the one on top is shorter.
That's awful.
Aesthetically, I really dislike that.
You have a pair of shorts that are like that, and every time you wear them, I'm just like, no.
Which ones are those?
No, they're like a North Face, I think. I'm just like, why? Huh. Why have the inner short longer than the outer short? Who's the designer behind this? I really want to talk to them. Does this make you a faster runner? Does this make you a more durable athlete?
It makes me feel like Jane Fonda from the 80s.
I mean, at least they could be orange or bright yellow, but they're not. I feel like they're purple.
Yeah, probably purple.
All right. So I'm not hot on liners. I'm going to go hot on briefs.
Yep. I'm gonna say, you do you. I guess I like to race with my line. I like to race with a liner, but again, it's this specific pair of shorts that I wear for all of my races.
Yeah. All right. Energy chews versus gels. Could we get more personal than this question?
No contest, gels, dude. I fucking hate chewing while running.
Gosh.
I do not like chewing. I am too lazy.
This is where I'm kind of just I go into that school of folks who have probably watched all of David Roche's videos on YouTube at this point, where he talks about consuming the gel so fast it goes past your palate. And all I think about with those energy chews is how energy intensive it is to eat those, and how much better it is to just squirt the gel in your mouth as fast as possible. Don't even try to taste it. Just use the carbohydrates for what they're there for, and enjoying the run. Yeah,
I prefer a gel. I've trained my gut to handle the amount of gel that I want it to choose. I mean, again, I understand some people have a texture thing, and sometimes it can be nice to switch it up. Again, what's most important is that you identify a fueling strategy that works for you, and that you train intentionally, and that you do that in all of your long runs.
Is it a texture thing, or is it a self-limiting belief?
I think that's up for people to discover themselves.
Gels aren't supposed to be fun.
No.
They're not supposed to be something you enjoy.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be something that helps you perform the way you want to perform, which should bring you joy. So whatever you like to use that thing. For me, energy chews are not hot. They get stuck in my teeth.
And you have to, like, count them out. Like,
it.
I never know how many I'm taking. And then, I think it's just, like, too complicated. And it takes up a lot of space. I find them wildly inefficient. But, like, if you have to mix it up and, like, gels aren't your thing, what's most important is you're getting in the carbs.
Get those carbs in. I'm going to be the gel advocate here. I'm pretty biased. I'm sure my athletes know this. There are so many different kinds of gels and different viscosities, different flavor profiles. For folks who have an issue with the ones that are very thick, like a goo energy gel, Roctane maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a Morton, it's kind of like a jello-y weird thing. Go for the liquid.
Do the liquid.
Yeah, goo liquids,
Never summer,
awesome. Never second. Never second. Yeah, great.
I mean, there's so many precision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just be like, unless you've literally tried all of them, just try all of them. Try stuff. Trying stuff is so good and fun.
That's what this process is all about, anyways, right?
Squirting different things into your mouth to see which one works best.
Speaking of squirting stuff into your mouth.
What a segue.
Hot or not, eating a burger before a run as quote-unquote gut training.
So this one was inspired by a real-life Q&A that we had at a YDS live event. Can I just cook? Can I just go?
Go.
So there is this sort of like popular belief in trail and ultra running that if you that you can train your gut by like eating a burrito as part of your normal life and then going on a run. And I really want to break this down probably far past the so I will frequently make that joke. I'll be like, haha, just because of like the constraints of my work life, sometimes I have to eat a giant thing of pad thai and then oh shit, that's my time that I have to run. And sometimes that just happens. But when we're talking about gut training, in order for gut training to actually be effective, you have to do it very frequently under similar conditions. That's the reason we always have athletes for weeks and weeks and weeks ahead of their A event, practice that fueling. You want to practice it in environmentally similar conditions. If you're racing up high, I want you to practice fueling up high. If you're racing in the heat, let's practice fueling in the heat, because we need to get that specific. And eating a burger at a barbecue and then going on a jog is simply not that specific. It doesn't actually it doesn't provoke any meaningful adaptation because it is a one-off event. So unless and then it would also be well, what is your end goal? So if your end goal was to be able to intake multiple cheeseburgers at a certain output during a certain event on certain terrain at a certain speed, wow, oh my God, that's a lot. But gut training has to be extremely specific. It's not enough to just run on a full stomach. That mentally might make you able to say, hey, look, I can there's no scientific reason for that to work. It's a storytelling mechanism.
So you're not hot. That's what I heard.
Not hot. I mean, I would say if you I would always rather an athlete be oh man, I didn't run that fast because I ate pad thai and I had to kind of go slow, than I skipped lunch and then I felt bonky as hell. Don't do that. But do not tell yourself that what you're doing is helping you gut train. I need to probably stop making that joke.
I'm definitely going to come in here with a different perspective on this. So I listened to a great episode of the MicroCast a few months ago with a leading researcher in high carb fueling. Mm-hmm. And he said, however you have to do it to push your stomach to handle more, that is helpful and good. I agree with you that
it has to be specific.
I agree that it has to be specific, and
even
it has to,
one hamburger one time will not improve your ability to fuel in a race scenario.
Correct. But he did say, hypothetically, you could go out on every Saturday and eat a burger during your run and use that as the way that you push your stomach to be able to handle more.
Right.
Is that super optimal? No, because you're not likely going to fuel burgers during your race.
That's what I'm saying, is the repetition is the key ingredient here. So you can't just do it one time and then I think we get to the point where, like, again, eat enough is the most important thing, but I also can't in good conscience say that eating a cheeseburger as your, like, primary long-run fuel is a good idea, right? Like, it starts to get very silly, so...
It is ridiculous.
But, like, you aren't provoking meaningful adaptations with any kind of one-off fueling experience, which, again, like, I think the overall lesson here is dial in your fueling plan way before you think you need to. Like, it requires that amount of repetition. Like, not just like in the 3 longest runs of your training cycle or the only time that you're going over 12 miles or whatever, every long run, finesse and practice your fueling. Like, even when I'm in my out of season, that's when I'm like maybe eating some more like fun foods. Like, maybe I will, like, we get a lot of like free food from like sponsors and stuff. And like, if I'm being a cheapskate, I'll eat some of the stuff that I like my body accepts but isn't my like ideal performance fuel, and some like fun gas station candy, and I'll do that in the off season. But like, as soon as I'm in any kind of real training mode, I am doing exactly what I'm going to do on race day on every fucking long run. Every mile, every 30 minutes, that is what I am doing.
And I do think just to hit on that point that I made around, what the experts are saying, if you want to increase your ability to utilize more carbohydrate during these runs, I would just be pushing the products that you're used to using and that already work, rather than trying to throw yourself curveballs like a burger or pizza before the run or pizza in a run. I think you're probably setting yourself up for a more difficult running experience and a more challenged outcome than if you just stick to what's already working and then try to increase those levels.
Yeah. So eat fun food, but don't tell yourself that it's like a training strategy.
All right.
We love burgers. We love pizza.
We do. But that's not the
But we
only
also love gels.
Stuff out there. Yes. Love those gels. Okay. All right. Listener question. Let's get into this topic on strength training. I've heard so many different takes on when to do strength training as a runner. Before you run, after you run, on separate days, it's confusing. Does it actually matter when I lift if I'm just trying to get stronger and not get injured? Should I be changing my strength training depending on where I'm at in my training cycle? And is there any benefit to splitting it into a separate session later in the day? Woo, a lot of ground to cover here, but I'm confident we can do it.
Yes, love this. And if you're really pumped on this kind of content, go back to our episode we did several months ago about strength training for trail runners, where we talk in depth about periodizing strength training the same way we periodize running training. So if you want an hour-long exploration of that topic, definitely check that out, and I'll link to it in the show notes as well. But at the end of the day, yes, timing matters.
Heck yes.
Heck yes is what I wrote in the notes in all caps. So, Zoe. But how much it matters does depend on your goals. So let's talk about the basics. Running and lifting both signal different physiological adaptations. So running activates the AMPK pathway, which promotes endurance and mitochondrial growth. Strength activates the mTOR pathway, which promotes muscle growth and strength. Endurance training activates the AMPK pathway, which is the AMP-activated protein kinase, which helps your body build more mitochondria and become more efficient at using oxygen, which is great for long runs. Strength training activates that mTOR, which is the mechanistic target of rapamycin pathway, which signals your body to build muscle and repair tissue. When you do both back to back, that AMPK can actually suppress mTOR a bit, meaning that strength gains might actually be a little bit muted. That's totally fine for most people, particularly if their priority is endurance and like sort of basic injury prevention. But if you really want to build strength, which like a lot of us do, spacing your lift later in the day gives mTOR more room to work.
Yeah, so let's just be specific about what back-to-back means. So that means like marrying your strength work to your run. You get in from your run and you go right to strength.
Yep. Which I never do because I live a crazy life where I feel like I'm always like going directly from a run to chugging a smoothie to being in a meeting.
Life is busy.
It is. So blessed.
Yet you're excelling.
So blessed. So, when you do both back to back, basically your body has to prioritize, and usually that endurance signal wins. Again, that's not bad, but we need to understand how to work with this. And again, like we're talking here about how to optimize things. And my like overarching message would be like, don't ever let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Like, don't listen to this and be like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, I'm never going to strength train. Ideally with a coach to get the shit dialed in, but please strength train. It is so good for runners. It is so good for athletes. Work with someone who can design a program that works for your lifestyle and needs.
Couple options. So when should we lift? Well, you can do it right after your run. That is very convenient. I think it's helpful from a habits perspective. If you've already got a great running habit, but you're trying to figure out how to get your strength in, do it right after your run. It's easy to marry one established habit to a new habit. That kind of can minimize your delayed onset muscle soreness as well. And it's best for maintenance, movement quality, neuromuscular durability.
Yep.
There is another option, which is the option that both Zoe and I prefer, which is where you're doing your strength work 2 to 6 hours after the run.
Yep.
And so this is going to give your nervous system time to recover. It's going to allow for better strength output. And it's also better if your goal is gaining strength, power, or becoming, what is that? Athletic?
I think I meant to write athleticism.
Or improving your athleticism. I was like, this is a new term. Evidence shows that separation improves strength and hypertrophy outcomes. So pretty important. I think even, if you're just doing some stability work, continuing to do that 2-3 hours after the run, whenever possible, is going to allow for just better outcomes. You're going to be less tired and more focused going into that session, which is always better.
Yeah, and hypertrophy just means building muscle, which like doesn't mean getting huge, like getting big like the TikTok bros, but like our goal is to increase the amount of muscle tissue we have. Don't be afraid of that. Like, let's all get big in our own beautiful runner way.
Right? Especially as runners, I feel like people, are like, I don't want to be bigger. That's bad.
Fuck that.
But
like,
stronger is better.
You won't be. I mean, this is always like the thing I run into. Like, I hate it when people are like, no, girl, you won't get big. It's like, well, okay, the message should be stop caring about getting big. And then also, like, no, if you're primarily running and not lifting very specifically to focus on specific kinds of hypertrophy, that's not really going to be a concern in terms of muscle development. But also, things are a lot established by your genetics. So maybe check out what your grandpa looked like when he was in his prime for a good indication there.
Mine still had hair, so I'm happy about that.
That's true.
All right.
I had a strong grandpa.
You had a strong grandpa?
One of my grandpas was in the NFL for one season.
Wow, that's
for the Bears.
Impressive.
Yep, linebacker. So that explains my shoulders. And then my other grandpa was he coached crew at Yale, so that also maybe explains my shoulders.
He was a coxswain, though.
That's true. I'm not built like a coxswain. He's a little guy. Although he rode all the way until he was like 103.
Nah, it's amazing.
Shout out Ace.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Okay, weekly planning based on run focus.
Yep.
So hard days should be hard. You guys have probably heard us talk about this before. Pair your strength with workouts and long run days. So your high stress training days and running, those are great days to do your strength work. Preferably 2 or more hours after that session.
Yep.
Easy days easy. Keep them easy. Don't
Yep.
add strength on those days. Use those days to really recover.
Yeah, and I know this is tough because for a lot of people it's tempting to be like, well, I'm already doing like a workout and that's longer than my normal run. So like from a timing perspective, people are tempted to put that lifting on their recovery day, but you are just like truly undermining the intent of the recovery day. Like please, please, please don't do that. Hard days hard, easy days easy. Really should be like, it's just got to be polarized, and doing almost any amount of like some mobility stuff, fine. Some stability stuff, also probably fine. But anything where the goal is to get stronger, that's not recovery.
Yeah, honestly, I'd rather athletes just be really cautious about that. Most people are overdoing it on their recovery days.
Yes, that's
just
true.
Chill out and let those adaptations sink in.
Let's just touch briefly on how strength can shift across your training cycle. So we like to sort of, again, think about periodizing your strength, starting with a base phase then building to a build phase, which is going to be a bit like starting to integrate plyometrics and like slightly heavier or compound lifts, and then a peak phase for race prep, which is when we're going to strip things back, actually focus on maintenance, keeping strength light, fast and snappy, jump squats, some single leg work, and here in that peak phase or race prep phase, really avoiding fatigue accumulation close to long runs or race specific workouts. So TLDR, stack post run if time is tight and your main goal is injury resistance. Like if you're new to the strength game and you're not like really looking at strength gains specifically, or you're just wanting to build that habit, or if you just truly like it doesn't work for you to be sweaty all day like I have the privilege of being. Thankfully my athletes can't smell me through our Zoom calls.
Thank God, but I can smell you right now.
That's true, because I have a double today and I'm going to do my strength after.
Nice.
So you can
3 hours after the double?
No, right after the double. The double's a less of a stimulus. I can't, I would have to be awake for like 18
do your
hours.
Strength work at 10 p.m.
I
tonight?
do my strength work at 10 p.m. tonight.
Nope.
So do your strength. You can do your strength, stack it post run if the primary goal is injury resistance. But if your goal is to build strength and power, you're looking at 2 to 6 hours difference. Again, making sure to replenish carbohydrates in between and then making sure you're getting enough protein as well. Time of day matters more for intensity than for basic movement. And remembering that strength isn't static. It should change with your season.
Love it. All right. The body doesn't know miles. It knows stress. I can't wait to talk about this. I've been thinking about it all day.
So the idea here is that your body doesn't recognize miles or minutes on a watch, right? Like those are human ways of trying to approximate stress or stimulus. And all forms of stress, be it physical, emotional, psychological, impact the same biological systems. And if you're not managing total stress, then you aren't managing your training.
Love it. So, stress is stress. Your body doesn't know separate sources. Great study. Is that a study? What is this?
Yes.
You say that. I
Okay,
don't know
so
how to say
Hans
that.
Sale's general adaptation syndrome. So
Thank
this
you.
is sort of like looking back at the history. I love to get historic up in here. This idea first was introduced into the literature in 1936, and that's the idea that the body responds to any stressor, injury, fear, training, poor sleep, in a predictable sequence, which is alarm, resistance, exhaustion. Crucially, this is when it was really first discovered in the literature that the body doesn't distinguish between types of stress.
This is such an interesting, very like black, like unnuanced way of looking at
the
how it
30s,
happens. But I love it though. 'cause
During
you
the
don't-
Great Depression, I don't think they were like putting a ton of money into exercise science.
You don't really need to know more than just that. Alarm, resistance, exhaustion. So this matters because, whether the stress comes from a hill workout or a work deadline, it activates the same physiological system. And, essentially it activates your nervous system, which is the most important thing that we're going to talk about.
Or the HPA, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Woo! That's a lot. So, this is going to release cortisol. There's a hormonal process that goes along with this. There's also like the mobilization of energy, increased heart rate, digestion is suppressed, immunity is suppressed. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the nervous system and what happens, that really gives us a good understanding of, if we're in this sympathetic nervous response, cortisol goes up. We're ready to fight. There's a tiger in the room. We're like trying to run away. We're totally amped up, or we're in a rest state where the parasympathetic nervous system is turned on, which allows us to digest, increases our immune function, allows for recovery.
Yeah. So all stress is stress, but not all stress is training stress, right?
Yeah.
So there are a deadline at work is still stress, but it's not the kind of stress that provokes adaptations that we're looking to provoke in training. So let's talk about different types of training stress. So there's mechanical stress, which is muscle breakdown, joint loading, and impact forces. There's cardiovascular stress, which is that increased heart rate, blood pressure and blood volume. And then there's neurological stress. So that's central nervous system fatigue from coordinating movement and motor unit recruitment. So let's talk about the combined effects of those things. A stressful day at work plus poor sleep will make your threshold workout harder, not just mentally, biologically. You're starting in a pre-fatigued state. And I don't care. Like, I'm saying this partially to myself.
Yeah. Good reminder.
I don't care if you say you can compartmentalize things, Zoe. Your body says otherwise, you dipshit.
Ask Tiger Woods how well compartmentalization worked for him over the years.
Well, it worked till it didn't. So there was another study in 2001 from Bishop et al. Found that when psychological stress was high, athletes experienced suppressed immune function and impaired physical recovery, even with no increase in training load. And that's why as coaches, we are always so insistent on checking in with our athletes about, like, how are things at home? How are things at work? Because, like, yes, I am a busybody and I do want to know about your personal life because I do care about you as a human, but also it, like, legitimately must be taken into account with training load. And I, as a coach, can control training load. Unfortunately, I haven't, as of yet, figured out a way to teleport into my athletes' lives and control their work or family stress. Working on it, though.
Let's talk about, did you talk about Bishop and psychological stress?
Yep.
I think that's really important too.
So I think the big takeaway is you just can't separate life from training. Your body adds all forms of stress together. So that's, like, the most important thing to think about here.
So the psychobiological mode of fatigue. Let's talk about this. Athletes who completed a mentally fatiguing task, like a Stroop test, before a cycling workout showed a 15% decrease in time to exhaustion. Even though their muscles were physiologically ready, heart rate, lactate, and VO2 all stayed the same.
So I feel like I accidentally did this study last week. I had to call Senator Mike Lee, chairman of the Natural Resources and Energy Committee, to get a quote for an article from him. And I was extremely nervous because I hate his guts, and also he's a fancy senator, respectfully. And that was extremely stressful in how I started my day. And then I had to rush to go do a VO2 max test or a VO2 max workout where I completely fell apart and, like, texting my coach on the side of the road kind of situation.
I mean, I feel like this was, like, exactly what happened to me at Chianti.
Yeah.
Like, just the stress of having to hitchhike to the race at 3:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden my ability to run fast was dampened significantly.
Yeah.
I mean, you can really feel, like, when you become aware of these things, you can really feel them.
Yes. And, like,
in real time.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, I can't just, like, not do my job.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's always about contextualizing and, like, understanding these things. And again, we never want to become avoidant or develop counterproductive narratives. All of it needs to be contextualized. And again, that's why working with a coach can be so advantageous. But again, just, like, knowing, like, to the extent that you have control over your schedule, maybe don't schedule a call with Senator Mike Lee right before you have to go do a workout.
I know, I'm trying to get better about that. Just as a coach and athlete, you know, I try not to schedule too many calls on the days where I have big workouts and only doing them after the workout. Yeah. So that way I can, like, really be present for that and separate that from the coaching rather than have it all jumbled in, which makes me tired and then I feel stressed on those workouts.
Right, and we have to save all of our arguments for recovery days about how to load the dishwasher correctly.
Oh, God.
Because otherwise it's a threshold stimulus.
I do think it's important. Like, I have a lot of athletes who have trouble connecting, like, the mental fatigue aspect to their performance.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of disconnect out there in the sporting area of that, like, the physiological side and the psychological side are two separate things. But really they're the same thing, and they influence each other and they work together. And there's, like, complete unison there. So when you feel mentally fatigued, of course, physiologically, you don't perform as well as you could.
Yeah.
And if you just had a big physiological stress, say you went and just did your workout and now you're trying to do strength work, of course you're not going to lift as much as you would normally if you were rested. Like, those things all work together. And what's really, I find really important for athletes with regard to this is that when you do notice those stresses stacking up, you can back off. You can try something, and if you don't feel right, you can always stop, but you can adjust your expectations ahead of time for how you think you're going to do, which is going to create a lot less resistance when you get out there and are actually doing the workout. Because quite frankly, in order to succeed at this stuff, you're going to be running after a meeting.
Yep.
You're going to be running after an argument with a spouse or a partner. You're going to be running with financial stress or whatever. Like, life is complicated and hard.
Yep.
And if you don't run because of those things, you're going to miss a lot of training opportunity.
Correct.
To the point where the training can still be productive.
Right. Yes. So, all of that was to say that was a really good 2009 study from Samuel Marcora, who is like just one of the goats of exercise physiology. And this matters because mental fatigue increases your RPE, and that happens via brain areas like the anterior cingulate cortex and insula, which regulate effort and motivation. Why God put those two things next to each other, I don't know.
Come on, man. My motivation would have been so different today if that wasn't the case.
Just got to switch some wires around. So the result is that the same run will feel harder and performance drops even though your fitness hasn't changed. So that's important to understand because like sometimes you'll have a tough day at work and then your run will suck. That is hard. I hate it. It is also normal. It is okay.
Yes.
We will be okay. And another thing that's happening is that mental fatigue actually will blunt dopamine signaling, which reduces motivation and the willingness to endure effort. Like if you just had to endure a really tough day at work, your endurance is not an infinite reservoir in many ways. So your ability to endure your VO2 max workout or to endure your long run will be different. Like cut yourself slack, work with your coach. And so I think the big practical takeaway here is don't ignore the impact of like a long day of emails or parenting, single parenting particularly, on your training. Rearranging your week to do hard workouts on lower stress days is smart. That is what us coaches are here to do, is to make sure the training fits into your life, and that it makes sense from a physiological perspective. Because again, I can't go into my athletes' lives and like control their stress. And to the extent that athletes do have control over their stress, like don't plan, like I made the absolute dipshit mistake of planning a book launch right before my like a event a couple years ago. Never again. That was real dumb with predictable results. So when things are in your control, think for 10 seconds about that and plan accordingly.
No, we've all done that, right? I think just giving ourselves the grace to learn and to try to navigate those situations with that openness and curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, what happened here? I think something I talked a lot about with Chianti was that the cumulative stress load, which we'll get into next, of having to deal with running with my piriformis bothering me for so many long runs just added up to me not wanting to do something that hard on race day. And that's very real because your ability to handle stress is finite.
Correct.
And I think the more athletes recognize this, like, you can have great positive self-talk.
Yep.
You can say stress helps me grow, and I'm capable of handling this challenge. And that does actually have physiological benefits. That can help to increase cardiac stroke, and it can dilate your blood vessels in a way that helps to transport oxygen and nutrients to your working muscles. But even the greatest self-talk and stuff can't really trump some of the cumulative effects of this if you're not paying attention to it.
Yes, self-talk is great. No self-talk in the world will change that your dopamine response is blunted. It won't change that gravity fucking breaks down your bones and muscles. It won't change like some of the physiological realities of this, which is why we just have to have this like candid conversation about it as athletes and coaches. Because I think like so often I coach a lot of amazing women, and oh my God, women are so tough, sometimes to their detriment, because they're like, you know what, I can be this badass mom, and then I'm going to go crush my training. I'm going to go crush this presentation at work. And yes, you can, but we also have to be very smart about it, and we have to talk about how things are feeling, and it always has to be a dance, and we have to recognize what levers we can pull on when that stress lever isn't in our control, and we have to adjust things. And that's not weakness, that is smart. It is a weakness to not recognize.
I have to say, this is one of those moments where if you're listening to this and that sounds like you, pause, rewind 10 seconds, listen to that again, pause, rewind, listen to it again.
I'm going to have to listen to this 100 times.
I mean, this is as much about you as it's about me, as it's about everybody that we coach and anybody out there who is a high performer. Because a lot of the things that, we see out in the world is that high performers have a really hard time knowing where their limits are and knowing when to stop and admitting when they need to take a step back.
Right.
And it's I think it's very challenging to have the awareness of knowing when you're starting to kind of teeter towards the edge of what kind of stress is productive. Which is why I think we should talk about cumulative load and your stress budget, because there are some things here that we can monitor that will help us understand where we're at in terms of our accumulated stress.
Yeah, so let's talk about the dose response principle. So this is the idea that adaptation only occurs when stress is followed by adequate recovery. Too little stress equals no adaptation. So if you're the person who's like, I had a mildly uncomfortable conversation at work and therefore I can't run for the rest of the week, we might need to introduce a little intentional stress via training stimulus.
Yes.
But too much equals breakdown. So stress plus rest equals adaptation. It is a balance. Too much stress equals no adaptation. Too little stress, again, no adaptation. So let's talk about allostatic load. So that's a term that was coined by the researcher McEwen in 1998. And this describes the total wear and tear on your body from repeated stress. So chronically elevated cortisol from unrelieved stress suppresses the immune system, impairs sleep, and slows muscle repair. So again, like if you're caretaking for a parent, you're parenting a lot of people that I coach are doing both, right? Like people are holding, this is one of the great joys of being a coach is you get to understand and see how much that like these amazing athletes that we get to like line up and compete with are holding. But like, whether or not you feel it, like your body is releasing cortisol and there are impacts from it. Like if you break up with a partner, or if you lose someone in your family, or there's just like you're going through if you're an accountant and it's April, like elevated cortisol impacts your ability to train and recover. And so there's an IOC consensus. There was actually the International Olympic Committee that was published in 2013 identified these signs of overtraining. And I think there's some nuance here, but I just want to like sort of bullet point some of these out, which are mood changes. So if you're seeing increased depression or irritability, chronically decreased heart rate variability. Again, like this is more like if you have a couple days in a row that suck, welcome to being human. It's terrible. It's beautiful. Join the club. But if there's like weeks that start to feel real bad, that's definitely a sign. Like talk with your coach. If you're self-coached, don't get on Reddit. Find an actual coach, please. But if you're seeing repeatedly lowered performance despite continued training and suppressed immune markers. So if your training isn't progressing, do not just add mileage or think that you can work harder to get out of that situation. Take a step back and look at the entire stress equation, including life. Like there have been times where I've had to bring my training volume down because fucking Trail Runner magazine was going through some shit and it annoyed the hell out of me because I hate reducing my training, but I also recognize that continuing at like a static training load, I would not get the same benefit from it. So
right. The stress has become unproductive.
I feel like this is your shit. This is some TJ shit.
All right, let's talk about my stuff here. Stress relief. Oh my gosh. It's recovery, not indulgence. Thank you for that header there, Zoe. Awesome.
I bolded it just for you.
We talked a little bit earlier about what happens to the nervous system when we're stressed. when we are stressed out, when we do a hard workout, when we have a fight, because Zoe doesn't empty the dishwasher. What happens is...
I emptied the dishwasher last week, okay?
Yeah, last week, guys.
I'm a feminist icon.
What happens is the sympathetic nervous system turns on. So it's essentially, it's like there's a tiger in the room and oh my God, it's gonna attack. And so there's a big physiological response and a hormonal response that happens within the body. We talked a little about that cortisol release, and we talked a little bit about the heart rate going up. There's a lot of other kind of ways that this presents for people. Like they can start sweating, or they get shaky, they feel nervous, they feel anxiety. Like as people, we should figure out what are our signs that are...
It can also really interrupt your appetite, and a big thing I see is when athletes are going through GI distress or limited appetite. Yeah. That's a big thing we need to watch out for.
Totally. So you got to figure out your signs for when your nervous system is really keyed up, because when that nervous system's keyed up, you don't have rest and repair happening within your body. Mm-hmm. So you literally aren't going to recover from your training. Which is super important for athletes to understand, because we're trying to think about how do we have progressive overload, how do we continue to stress so we can get better. Well, the only way that works is if you're actually activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest state. And so this is going to really rely on turning on your vagus nerve, which promotes rest, digestion, all that stuff. Tissue repair helps lead to better sleep. And so essentially, if you're unable to get into that rest state, you're going to really be challenged. So talk to us a little bit about what happens when we're feeling a little bit like we're not getting that sleep because that sympathetic nervous system.
So it's going to slow your glycogen restoration. So just your muscles' ability to hold onto glycogen, your fuel, like your gas tank is going to become less gas tanky. Essentially.
Yeah.
It also increases your injury risk because of myriad of symptoms. And it decreases your reaction time and endurance capacity. I think that you've had literal injuries from like, you were stressed, you went on a trail run, you like broke your hand once. Is a thing that happened.
Oh my God.
I'll
never forget that day.
I just remember you like walking out of the door.
Hurt my finger.
You were like, I'm very stressed about this meeting I have to have. And then you came back and you're like, my hand is broken. So science.
I mean, we push ourselves too far. It just happens. I'm just as susceptible of these things as anybody else. CCC is a great, I remember that. Like, I got so many issues after that race, should not have pushed through. But I think the biggest thing to take away from that is for athletes to recognize something that we're all working on, hopefully, is what are the things we can do to get into that relaxed state? How do we reactivate our parasympathetic nervous system when we feel like, we're off for a ride with our nervous system and there's a tiger in the room?
Yeah.
Breathing is the number one way to do that.
Love breathing.
Working on deep breathing and mindfulness are going to help you with this. Even 5 minutes a day makes a big difference. I recommend just simply thinking about having a 1-to-2 ratio of inhalation to exhalation. That's what's proven by the research to activate that vagus nerve.
Box breathing.
Yeah, and that's a great way to do it. So if you're doing box breathing, breathe in, count of 4, create that first side of the box, breathe out for a count of 8, next side of the box, and so on and so forth. But having that 4 to 8 or 1 to 2 ratio of inhalation to exhalation, yoga breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, this really helps. Every athlete can develop that tool and do it every day. I do it every night before I go to bed. It's awesome.
Yep. So another thing to point out here is this is why we always want to emphasize the use of effort over metrics. So RPE is the body's internal measurement of stress and effort, and accounts for hidden factors like sleep, nutrition, and mental fatigue, where heart rate doesn't. Just because your watch gives you a number doesn't mean it's more accurate than how you feel. Please. Don't do that.
My workout, case in point today.
Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
Heart rate, valuable tool to use alongside things, but RPE is king. Your effort is accurate. Looking at another really interesting study from 2013, daily heart rate variability strongly predicted endurance performance and training readiness in elite athletes, and sudden drops in heart rate variability signaled the need for lower intensity. I remember last year when I was going through very big job changes, I had 1 week on my like heart rate variability graph that was just like the most like, if you wanted to put like in the Met gallery, like this is what it looks like when your body finally realizes that stress is stress.
This is the
it's
picture
like this graph
of an active nervous system.
Yeah.
Very active.
It's real. So suppressed heart rate variability, subjective wellness scores like checking in with your mood, soreness, sleep quality were actually better predictors of overtraining than heart rate variability or blood markers, which is why as coaches, we always emphasize those qualitative pieces of information as well. Again, don't just point me to like whatever thing your Garmin shoots out. How are you feeling, dude? Like actually put a word to it, journal about it. And this is why we always push our athletes to use the log as a space of reflection. Yes, so that we can use that information, but it's so important as athletes that we systematize a way of checking in with ourselves on the daily, because that is vital information. And if you're not taking a second after your runs to check in with yourself, how do I feel? And to put that to words, then you are missing out on a really important, like, fucking don't even run with your watch, but take the I don't care what your watch says, but like use those few minutes after your run to actually give me some usable information. Give yourself usable information. So listen to your body before you listen to your watch. Metrics are tools, not rules.
All right. How to train with your whole life in mind. Let's put it all together for folks out there. Okay. Stress audit. I really love this. Each week, rate the following on a scale from 1 to 5 and see where you fall on it. 5 being optimal, totally abundant, a great state. Maybe 3 being normal, good, in the middle. 1 being terrible, I'm falling off a cliff here. Sleep, work stress, emotional load, training, recovery status, I think are 4 really good ones to look at. And then, you can use that to help build awareness around what are the big factors here that present for me when I'm really stressed. Like for me, sleep isn't really affected when I'm stressed. I have to be super stressed for that to go down. Work stress is always around the same, so I don't have usually big issues there. But emotional load, that's where I really have my struggles. So I have to know what are my signs that like my bandwidth is kind of limited there. My budget, my finite resources are being depleted. Oh, for me, patience, 100%. That's my number one thing. I always say to you, Zoe, I'm losing my patience. I have to stop.
Yep.
And you got to know that for yourselves out there. If you don't know that, you're going to fall off the cliff. Okay, decision-making tools. So if your total score is high, you can shift workouts to lower intensity or insert a rest day. So if you're getting a lot of those like low numbers, you're not feeling too good, shift it. Take a rest day. It's always all right to take a rest day. And, you can use low stress days for high demand sessions as well. So I think that really helps.
Yeah. So, thinking about this in the context of low energy availability, so not taking in enough energy overall or even enough carbohydrates from underfueling or even just overtraining, increases cortisol, disrupts reproductive hormones, and slows your adaptation. So I think the big thing to note here is that you can only adapt to what you can recover from. So fuel and rest accordingly.
Big picture. Stress plus rest equals adaptation and growth. Doesn't get any better than that. Like
actually,
that simple equation.
It does, because I found this study that I really, really like. So this is from Drew and Finch in 2016. So athletes with low training variation, so people who are doing more or less the same thing every day in terms of distance and effort, had significantly higher injury rates. So again, this is really why we're looking for that polarization in training and making sure recovery is a primary heuristic guiding our training. If you're doing kind of the same thing most days, that's a huge predictor of training or of injury.
Athletes, run your recovery days at a recovery pace.
Yep.
Chronic stress without variation keeps cortisol elevated. So that's going to blunt muscle protein synthesis and reduces your mitochondrial biogenesis. And the big takeaway here is your body doesn't adapt in the middle of a workout. It adapts when you're in a state of recovery. So that's when the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. And, stress is an important stimulus. Without it, we can't grow. But without recovery, we have nothing. We don't get the benefits of that stress. Final notes?
Yeah, your body is always listening, but it doesn't speak in pace and mileage and a lot of the things that we see on Training Peaks and Strava. It speaks in systems. Hormones, heart rate, motivation, fatigue, those are all important things to tune into and pay attention to. And if you learn to manage the full picture of stress, you won't just unlock consistency, but joy in the long-term process.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about.
Joy.
So I hope you guys got some good information here. We appreciate you sticking through to the end. And if you're one of those folks who's still with us, please leave us a review. The last time I looked, we hadn't had a review on here since 2023, and this podcast is a lot different now than it was then.
It's true.
So I can't say this enough. Leave us a review. It helps us build our community. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. microcosmcoaching@gmail.com, and you can check out microcosm-coaching.com if you're interested in coaching. See you next week.